Welcome to Automated Mobility, the people behind the wheel. In this podcast series, we get to know the experts working in the field of automated mobility. What drives them, and how do they think their work contributes to a better mobility system? I am your host, Henriette Cornet, and I am the coordinator of SHOW, a European project testing automated vehicles in real life. SHOW is led by UITP, the International Association of Public Transport. Together with 70 other partners, we investigate a future where mobility is shared, connected, and automated. Hello, Lieselot. Hello, Evy. Nice to have you with me today for this episode at the VUB, the Vrije Universiteit Brussel. I hope I say it correctly.
Sounds perfect, yes.
Yeah, please say it in Dutch for me, Lieselot.
Vrije Universiteit Brussel.
Thank you. And so we will call it VUB from now on. I hope you agree with that.
Perfect.
So welcome on board. I will present very briefly both of you, and I will love to hear more about what you are doing in general, like your background maybe to start with, and we will dig into more detail later. So starting with you, Lieselot, Professor Lieselot Vanhaverbeke. I also hope I say it right. You are associate professor at VUB, and Evy, you are assistant professor. So Evy Rombaut, yeah, assistant professor, and you are member of the. Both of you, you are working at the Department of Business Technology and Operations, called BUTO, and the Research Center Mobility, Logistics, and Automotive Technology, called MOBI. And we will come back about MOBI a bit later and what you are doing. So maybe just to start so that the audience get to know you, tell us a bit about your background and what you are doing at VUB.
Thank you, Henriette. Very nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation. The background, I studied here at Vrije Universiteit Brussel, economics. Complemented that with a degree in business informatics, and then I stuck around for a PhD in operations research. So I was studying location analysis from a quite quantitative point of view. And that, of course, when you talk about location, you talk also about movement of people, you talk about mobility. And so gradually I rolled into mobility research, which I'm doing now already for quite some years. And I'm leading the lab here on autonomous and electric vehicles, where we are working on the technology side of automotive applications.
Great, cool, okay, good start for the episode.
Hey, Henriette. It's great to be in the podcast. So I think I have a very similar story to Lieselot. I think it's very difficult to leave the VUB in a way because I studied here as well. I studied mathematics actually, and so my background is quite fundamental. But then I really felt like I was missing the applications. And that's how I ended up at the economics department. And essentially my PhD was, initially I had a PhD in HR analytics. So I was really into human resources and quantitative modeling of human resources structures. And then, I had a really nice talk with Lieselot about research in autonomous mobility, and she offered me the position of a postdoctoral researcher. So after my PhD was finished, and that's how I basically enrolled into research on mobility. And now I'm really focusing on the quantitative methods within autonomous mobility, and also from the user perspective. Really, it's the statistical modeling of this.
Great, I see. Thanks a lot. Maybe before we dig in the topic in this, knowing more what the research institute is doing and what's the role of VUB in the project, can you tell us a bit? Are you familiar with the history of VUB actually? Because that's for the people that are listening to this podcast. I will tell you where I come from with this. So when I read the name of the university, for me, I translated with the Vrije Universiteit of Brussel. And I noticed that actually there is a French university, which called Université Libre de Bruxelles, and I got absolutely confused. And I think for the audience, it would be nice to tell a bit what happened, so to say, briefly, and why we have these two universities, and maybe if you are still working together, and so on.
All right, yeah, very good question, actually. Also a bit a sensitive question. Because, well, we indeed emphasize that we are the Vrije Universiteit Brussel, and we cannot communicate as the Free University of Brussels, formally. Why is that? Well, then you have to know a little bit the history of Belgium. Until, well, I would say a certain point in time, French was a ruling language in the whole of Belgium. But there was, of course, also a Flemish part. And Flemish was, in terms of education, for example, not recognized until, well, let's say the 70s, 60s, 70s. And then there was what we call a kind of a revolution also at the universities. And at that moment in time, our mother institute, the Université Libre de Bruxelles, they also recognized that. And so the Vrije Universiteit Brussel, the Flemish institute, was formed. So formally, we are part of the Flemish community. And so the ULB, the French university, is part of the Walloon community. But of course, we are located right next to each other. We have very good relationships with the Université Libre de Bruxelles, or collaborating in terms of research, in terms of advancing knowledge to help Brussels as a region forward. And I think that was quite well illustrated during the anniversary that was celebrated a few years ago, the 50-year anniversary of the university, where we had the two rectors of the VUB presenting together, and they ended up their presentation with a tango together. It takes two to tango, and so that perfectly illustrates how we are working very well together in a country where, well, in terms of languages, we have a huge diversity.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thanks for illustrating this. And what is meant by free, actually? What is behind this free university?
Yeah. The free university indicates that we stand for an independent way of thinking. So we have the different, well, I would say dogmas that dominate. For example, in Belgium, we have a huge Christian, well, I would say history, where KU Leuven is then the university that relates to that. But there is also the humanist point of view in terms of, well, point of view on life, and VUB really stands for that. Independent thinking, no dogmas that control our research or results. So we really stand behind the concept that Poincaré nicely formulated, that we cannot subject ourselves to any dogmas, any kind of constraints on thinking. And so we stand for a very humanist, free-thinking university.
Nice. Okay, nice. And is it necessary to speak Dutch to study here and to work at the VUB?
That is not necessary at all. For example, in our team, we are very international. We have people coming from Morocco, people coming from China, and I could not enumerate all the nationalities in the whole of the MOBI research group, because we are so many. So English is the way we interact.
Working language,
yeah.
Okay.
And also for students, we have Dutch programs, of course, but we also have English programs, and quite a lot of them. So
okay.
Also there we are quite internationally oriented.
Nice. Okay. Let's move to the research center MOBI, which stands again. So I'm saying the name again. It's for mobility, logistic, and automotive technology. When I type it, so I Google it, I checked a bit, and there was this nice sentence: transitioning towards sustainable urban mobility and logistics. So it's very promising, and I would say very aligned with the vision we have at UITB or in the different projects that we are doing. So can you maybe say a few words about some topics? It doesn't need to be super exhaustive, but just that the audience get to know a bit like what the research center is about.
Well, and since we were talking history, I suggest we continue on that same line. The research center started with Professor Maghetto studying electric vehicles and batteries for electric vehicles. People having been in Brussels in the 70s of last century, they might know the blue small electric vehicles that were driving from campus to the center of the town. So we were pioneers in terms of electric mobility and everything that has to do with that. And so based on that, well, there was first technology. So in our research group, we have our department and faculty of the engineers. But of course, next to that, it's not only about technology, it's also about people, about society, about other aspects. And then that was complemented by the work that we do at the Faculty of Social Sciences and the Solvay Business School. So we are an interdisciplinary research group that focuses on solutions for mobility, electric solutions contributing to sustainable mobility, and so also in terms of the new technologies, autonomous mobility.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this great introduction. I think we have set the scene quite well. So I suggest we move on with the show project and how VUB is involved in the show project. You have big responsibilities, ones that will come. I mean, I would say like a big one that will come, and that's kind of the topic of this episode today. I guess it's all around impact assessment. Can you tell us more? And I'm asking you, Evy, can you tell us more about what's your role in the project, like from a VUB perspective, and maybe also your personal role in the different work packages and so on?
Okay, yeah, certainly, Henriette. So yeah, indeed, we have a very big role in the project because we are focusing on the impact of autonomous mobility and basically the solutions that are being developed or the solutions that are being tested and piloted in the different cities. And so essentially, I think that's one of the main outcomes of the project is we want to know what is the impact of automation. And so we feel the responsibility. It's heavy on our shoulders. So we lead the work package, so that means that there are several components that we are currently also overseeing. There's in terms of safety, in terms of traffic efficiency, what is the impact on environment, what is the impact on energy, what is the impact on the user. So it's really very holistic. And so what we're trying to do is bring all these components together in a holistic impact assessment framework. So obviously there will be in-depth analysis on all these different components, but we are developing a framework which we called the M3 ICA, and it stands for multi-impact, multi-criteria, and multi-actor.
Okay. Let's slow down.
Okay.
I think that was a lot of information for everybody. Multi-impact. So what I hear. So tell us, maybe we go step by step.
Okay,
so there is impact, criteria, and actor. So let's start maybe. I don't see really the difference between impact and criteria. So
well, so the impact is essentially about the different orders of impact that we can think about. So maybe you are familiar with the ripple effect by Milakis. He has essentially defined the impact of automation to happen in different ripples. So you have a first direct impact on society, on the individual, maybe even vehicle level, but then you can look also at the bigger impact on society as a whole. And so what we want to do is situate also these different types of impacts within these different ripples.
Okay. So is it like micro, like more at the individual level, for example, and you are zooming out to look at the big picture? And this multi-impact refer to this kind of level of...
exactly.
Okay,
so we really want to situate the different types of impacts within these ripples. Secondly, we want to look at different criteria. So as I mentioned earlier, so there's, for example, the safety aspect, there's the traffic efficiency impact, and each of these impacts are essentially can be summarized with different KPIs.
KPIs?
So key performance indicators, and those will be measured at the pilot sites. So, for example, if we want to know how efficient the autonomous vehicle is performing, we would want to know what the delay is in traffic and how often is this vehicle delayed in the pilot site. So that could be one KPI that we are measuring at the pilot site. Or for safety, we want to know how many accidents are happening, hopefully none, or just even conflicts, just conflicts that happen with different vehicles. And so what we'll be doing is measuring all these different KPIs at the pilot sites. And then we bring them all together within the different criteria. So safety will be measured with different key performance indicators, and those will be brought together in the criteria of safety.
I will come back on the criteria. I think that's very central when we are talking about impact assessment. And the last one for this M3ICA, it's multi-actor.
Yes.
So there, please, can you elaborate?
Yes, so there we bring in the perspective of the different stakeholders, because we can't look at mobility without bringing in all the stakeholders that are involved. So there's obviously the user, who will play a very important part, but then we look at all these different stakeholders in mobility, which are the public transport operators, the local authorities, the mobility service providers, the manufacturers. So each of these stakeholders has a different view on what mobility should be or where mobility should evolve to in their view in the future. And they have different stakes in it. So, and that's really also what we want to include in the M3 ICA model, is to see, actually do their opinions or what they value, does it match with what can be expected in the future?
I see. Wow. That seems like a great ambition. Yes, please.
Maybe I'll just to add to this that we are building on the work of our colleague Kati Macharis, who has been doing a lot about involving these actors into a multi-criteria analysis. And so she has developed the MAMCA approach, where you have indeed the multi-criteria analysis with stakeholders. And so with this M3 ICA, we have designed this together with her. So we are taking this one step further.
Okay. I wanted to ask where it comes from. Like it's developed by your institute, right?
Yeah, Kati Macharis is the founder of that MAMCA methodology.
Okay, good, totally. Very good to know. Yeah, because that's I'm familiar with impact assessment because it's a big part of my PhD thesis itself, and I had the incredible challenge of reviewing the different because there are so many methods, and I think for the audience it may not be clear, why do you need a new one? Why is there this need of having a new method? And maybe one question I would like to dig into more detail regarding the criteria, regarding the KPI. How do you select the indicators? Because what I did, in my PhD thesis, I wanted to make something quick for decision-making support. And my God, I spent so much time on how many criteria, how many indicators are enough, so to say, so that you can build a decision based on the criteria. And it's never ending, right? You could assess everything forever, and you need to make decisions. So in this case, and in the show project, how many do you have, and how have you selected them? Where to stop, so to say? Well,
Henriette, it's a really difficult question, actually.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, seriously, it was a joint effort. It has been a humongous effort. And I would say the KPI list is never final, and it's constantly developing, and we're adding new KPIs, taking KPIs off, and so as I mentioned, we are leading the work package, but that means that there are also very important activities within this work package where, for example, there are partners that are specialized in road safety specifically. So our partner NTUA, the Technical University of Athens, they are specialized in road safety in specific. And so they really know which KPIs are necessary. They have done extensive research on this topic alone. So they were a very important part of the different rounds of iterations. So in essence, they made a first selection of which KPIs are very necessary for them to be able to perform the in-depth analysis. And so we have basically specialists on all these different criteria. And then there were multiple iterations as well with the demonstration sites, because there's a wish list, but that doesn't mean you can necessarily also gather these KPIs if it is even possible or feasible to gather them. And fortunately, also, we have the demonstration sites that, the results from demonstration sites will be complemented with the simulations. So there will be KPIs that will also be gathered through simulations that cannot be measured. So in that sense, we need to really make it's an exercise where we see what do we want, what is feasible, and do we indeed have enough to then come up with the answer to our research question and hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah, it's clearer. I hope the audience get a bit a clearer picture. But you mentioned the simulation. I would like to come back to that just in a bit. But also coming back again to these indicators, you mentioned at the very beginning a few of them. And what I understand is there is some data that you will collect from people, more like the subjective data, and there is the observed data. Maybe also say a word about this different type of data that you can gather.
Yeah.
And after we can switch a bit to the simulation and how simulation plays a role, because we had in a previous episode, episode 7, Joachim from VIF talking to us about simulation work and so on. Maybe we can create a nice link, but starting first with the type of data that you can collect for which KPI?
Yeah. Well, so there will be observations. It's essentially data from the vehicle itself.
For example, can you?
Well, it can be, for example, the number of hard brakes in a shuttle. It will be very interesting to know how often this happens, and also to see how uncomfortable it might be for people. At the same time, we also have more subjective data. Well, essentially, people that will fill out a survey on site, so user acceptance surveys that have been created. So they will really evaluate how important or how they value the ride with the vehicle, whether they thought it was safe to go into the vehicle. And then we also have data that will then be post-processed in combination with of the demo sites and the simulations. So essentially data that will be brought together afterwards.
No, I think that gives a very good overview of how we collect the data on the KPIs. Of course, there's a level above that, and that's those criteria. In a multi-criteria analysis, you weigh them. Yeah? And for that, we have the workshops with the demo site leaders that we will be starting, in autumn of 2022, where we will really discuss with all the stakeholders on the site. So we will travel to all the demo sites, and there we will interview them, ask them questions about how important they think those different concepts, those different criteria are for them. And then that is weighting information. So in that sense, we also take the actors on board, and we really have, again, that's qualitative data that we use in combination then with the objectively measured, the quantitative approach. And all of that together in the mix will give an overall evaluation.
Evaluation, for the project, I think it's essential. I think for the Commission, the European Commission that is funding us, they really want to know how it works. But after, for the next project and knowing what's the real benefit of this technology. So what I understood is really from an environmental perspective, from a societal perspective, and also, I guess, also individuals, so not only society as a whole, but really as an individual. And of course, you have also the economic part, correct?
Indeed, and that complements and also the work packages that work on business models, for example. So also in that sense, we are complementary, of course, with the other work packages.
Coming back to the simulation, how simulation plays a role, and I think it's important, and Joachim told us a lot about it in this episode, so the audience now can relate, I believe. But in case some haven't listened to the past episodes, let's repeat it. The way I see this simulation work is really to upscale the impact assessment, because in the show project we have fleets. Of course, we have many vehicles, and we will collect a lot of data, and we hope to have really a lot of users and so on. But it still has its limitation, because we cannot really see how, we will run the EVs in a neighborhood, but how could it affect the city? For example, this type of fleets will be in the entire city. So here I understood that's where simulation plays a role. Can you add on that, like how you see this benefit of using simulation for impact assessment?
Indeed, the challenge is that when you have a pilot that works with, maybe 2 or 3 shuttles, and you have them run a certain trajectory, but you want to assess traffic efficiency, for example, for a whole city, or you want to do that even at a street level. Right now we have autonomous shuttles interacting also a lot with, the normal cars as we still know them today. If you want to drive conclusions about, for example, what would it mean if we go really into the idea of shared autonomous vehicles, for that kind of scenarios that we will assess, then we need the simulations. And we need the results from the real pilots in terms of what does it do already at the moment on the field, in combination with what do we know from literature, what do we know from theory, in terms of queuing theory, for example. We integrate that in the simulation, and then we really we try to mimic,
extrapolate
a whole transport system that is totally based on this kind of solutions, shared autonomous vehicles, for example. So simulations are crucial to have a good evaluation method in terms of the impact assessment.
Yeah. And I guess you will work with scenario. I don't know if it's too much for the audience, but there is also kind of in this extrapolation a way, I would even say, foresee the future. Like you are trying to imagine, like if you are saying, okay, let's imagine we have thousands of AVs all around, you can also imagine different type of scenarios, and you can play around, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a really crucial point as well with simulations, that you can vary these different parameters and also do some sensitivity analysis in the end and see what would change if we change certain parameters.
Yeah. I can really see how this will help us answer the question if we want this technology in our lives, and if we want it in our mobility lives. So this will definitely help.
And it also relates, of course, to the different scenarios that were put out to start with in show, where we have the scenarios for, the personal mobility, and then also looking at, maybe integration with logistics, so these kind of solutions. And each demo site has a certain qualification in terms of the scenarios that we then will analyze. So in that sense, that really fits with also the very initial setup of the project.
We're looking forward to have all these results. I think we are all waiting for these results. So you published recently for the Commission a report on the impact assessment framework, which I would put the link in the description of the episode. I think if people want to dig into more details, they should read it and check it. In this report, you are mentioning first results of a first pilot workshop that you conducted in Linköping, in Sweden. Can you tell us briefly what you learned? What was the learning of this pilot?
The learning of that pilot was that, we have collected quite a lot of information there. I must say that the workshop was really nice. Very committed people, and they have a really good vision about where they are going. Anna, all credits to Anna for organizing it, and also for the engagement that she creates with the stakeholders.
So Anna Anand from VTI, if you are listening to us.
All credits, Anna. Also thank you for organizing that workshop on site. site. That was the first, also pilot impact assessment workshop that we did there. And of course, we learned in terms of how to set up the workshop and how detailed we should go with the stakeholders. That was one of the learnings, I think, of the very practical session. On the other side, we see a lot of enthusiasm there, and that also shows in the KPIs then that we took into account and the initial calculations that we did in terms of the overall impact assessment. So in that sense, I think that was a very good way. And indeed, if pilot site leaders are listening, please have a look at that report to see what we will be doing also on your side, and to what kind of very interesting information this can also lead for the local community where the pilot is running, and things that might be used as takeaways also for the local demonstrations.
Yeah, I like this idea. I think we can emphasize the aspect of communication afterwards, because thanks to this impact analysis, impact assessment, we can later also better communicate to the local stakeholders, to the decision makers, even to the public, saying, look, we can save so much energy, or you can go faster, or you can have more comfort, and so on. So this communication aspects that could be emphasized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was really interesting for me as well is we've organized these types of workshops also in a former project, in the Drive to the Future project. And I find it so interesting to see the enthusiasm of the stakeholders also afterwards, because they really go into these in-depth discussions with each other. And so it's really very interesting for them as well to just participate, because then they hear the perspectives of other people, and they have discussions still afterwards about, oh, really? You thought this? And, so that's really fun to see. So I think for the stakeholders as well, it's a very fun workshop.
Yeah, and there is kind of an educational purpose. They can see how what they are doing goes in the bigger picture, and I think that's also very essential that you are doing this. It's a great contribution to the project. Okay, I hope that the audience has a better understanding of what VUB is doing in the project. And as I mentioned, I will put some references in the description of the episodes, and also they can contact you if they want to know more about your activities and what you are doing in the project and so on. And still, there will be this demonstration on the different sites. So we are in August 2022. So if you are somehow in the next month, check the website where the demonstration will take place and try the vehicles. I'm not saying this enough. I'm repeating this all the time. But before we conclude, I would like to come back. The name of the podcast is actually The People Behind the Wheel. So who are the experts driving the change through automated vehicles and automated mobility? So I really like to ask the person I interview about their motivation. What motivates both of you? What are your motivation for working in this field? And how did you end up here? So not only because you are attached to VUB, I guess. I mean, you could have chosen a lot of different directions. So why did you choose this aspect of? So Lieselot, I know you did a lot with electric vehicles and automated vehicles, and Evy, you come from this mathematics and economic background. So yeah. Tell us maybe more. Maybe Evy, you can start telling us how did you end up there, and what's really appealing for you in this working in this field?
Yeah, I think for me it's really about the societal relevance more than anything. I guess that's why I wasn't really happy doing fundamental research, because I really felt like I want to deliver, well, not that fundamental research is very important, don't get me wrong, but essentially I wanted to see the contribution in my own lifetime, let's say, to really see what are the immediate results of what I am researching, and how can I bring relevance to society in that way. And for me, autonomous mobility has a lot to do with sustainability, and I really look at it from a shared perspective. So I think we really need to evolve to a future where we share vehicles and we don't just drive our own individual vehicle everywhere. And it concerns me in the sense that, I recently gave birth to a son, and I really wonder how is his future, what is his future going to look like, and what kind of a society is he going to live in? And so in that sense, I think it becomes very personal, just to to know that he will be living in a future where sustainability is valued and we are really moving into a direction where we give back to the earth and not only take.
Wow, it's very nice. No, I love it. I mean, I can feel really the motivation behind, and yeah, I completely follow you on this. What about you, Lieselot? What is your motivation for this field, and how did you end up doing this? Which decisions did you take in your career that led you to this point?
I've always had a huge interest in technology in general, and how technology drives progress. How do we progress as humanity for the better, as Evy says, for a better world? Giving back to the earth. How can we use technology to accomplish that? And how does technology relate to sustainability? That is sometimes I think a dilemma in terms of, well, we have new technologies, and it shouldn't be technology for technology, but it can really help us towards a better world. On the other side, it helps us to do things in a more efficient manner, also in a quicker manner. And is that always so good? So in that sense, that is, I think, the huge driver for me. Let's study how technology helps us to make mobility better. And for me, it has been an evolution in terms of also the studies and the career I followed. There is this singer, and it used to be a band, I don't know if you know it, Moby, or Moby, or Moby. Yeah, you could relate a little bit. It was a grunge singer in the 90s, and then he evolved into electronics music.
Yeah, I can recall.
You recall him? Yeah. Right. And he
with
has
big black glasses, right?
He has big glasses, black glasses, and he also evolved from, he evolved into completely eaten vegan, for example. So he evolved from grunge into electronics. He made a song Mobility, and I can really relate to the fact that, well, we are learning more, and we are also evolving towards those newer insights, and then adopting our way of living to that. So I really like that song, and also that idea of evolution. For me, mobility, it needs to be a mix. It's a mix of vehicles, of types of vehicles. We discussed earlier already that we are studying with our electric vehicle team not only cars, but we are also looking into electric bicycles, for example. And of course, there are other modi that you can use. And for me, the mix is really important. And if I relate that to my personal life, everybody goes to different life stages. Evy just mentioned being in the early motherhood. I think she can also relate to the fact that, well, it is nice to walk, it is nice to bike, but sometimes, with a tired baby on board, that is not always that easy. And sometimes you need a car if you want to make trips that are quite long or to inaccessible places. We can then say, let's make all places very accessible, or we could say, let's use cars and vehicles in general in a very intelligent manner. And for me, that is what mobility is about. Tailored for everybody's needs, but also looking at the greater good. So not only the individual comfort, but also at the level of society. What does it bring? In that sense, making a better world for us all.
That's very beautiful words, I would say, to conclude this episode. I can fully relate. And when you mention the technology, I can really see that's something that I like to emphasize. Doing this podcast, working on this field, is we are not pushing for automated vehicles. We really want to understand how they can contribute to our lives and so on. And having the bigger question in mind, how much technology do we want in our lives? So I think we are, the three of us, at least, very much aligned on that to always better understand what are the impacts, what does it mean, and how we will move in a more sustainable way in the future. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience? A publication that you have maybe released recently, a report, a conference, something you would, like another podcast, whatever. Like, is there something? And I would be very glad to put it in the reference of this episode.
Well, I think we can mention quite a few publications, but I suggest you put a link to our website where people can find the publications, conference proceedings. And also we have a podcast episode that will be on there. So in that sense, a link to our website would be great. And if we want to meet in person, a lot of us of the team here will be at the TRA conference in November 2022. So let's meet there in person and further discuss.
Great. Yeah, let's do this. Definitely. Evy, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, maybe I also want to mention if there are any Dutch speakers. We also have contributed to a book, Autonome Motorvoertuigen. So that will also be interesting to read about the societal impact of autonomous vehicles. And we also have a Dutch podcast on our findings at the, basically the findings from our shuttle that was running at the university campus in Jette. So they can also consult this. It should be on the website of the Wetenschapsfestival. So Dutch speakers, all just go have a look.
Great. Yeah, I will put the link, and I will also put the link of the song from Moby. I think that's very nice to have it here in this episode. So thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for answering all these questions. I wish you good luck with your work in show. I know it's a big amount of work in front of you, very, very important, a big responsibility. But I'm looking forward for the future collaboration among us.
Thank you very much, Henriette.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Automating Mobility, the people behind the wheel. This podcast would not have been possible without the support from the Horizon 2020 program by the European Commission under the grant agreement number 875530. Check out the links for the show project and other references in the description of the episode, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay tuned. Don't hesitate to share this episode or give us feedback to it. My name is Henriette Cornet from UITP, and I hope to see you at our next episode.